Welcome back to the Ordinary Millionaire podcast. In today's episode, I have Omni Casey. He is a experienced investor. He started investing in Hawaii, I think about 20 years ago, and he's grown his portfolio to, he was just telling me it's over 500 properties. He dabbles in a lot of very interesting, cool stuff in the real estate space. So I'm really looking forward to hearing everything he's got to say and learning a ton of stuff from him. Omni, how you doing today?
Matthew, I'm great. I appreciate having me on. Excited to do this podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. So I'd just like to start by getting a little bit of a background about how you got into real estate investing, what kind of prompted you to get into it, and just any information you want to give us about the starting journey in this real estate world.
Yeah, real estate is probably very similar to many people. I felt like I was supposed to do something different, right? I grew up in Hawaii. I'm one of 8 kids. We all had a traditional education, work expectation. My parents were entrepreneurs. My dad had his own construction, roofing, waterproofing companies growing up. So I saw that side. But most of my siblings were kind of going down this normal path. And I just felt like that wasn't for me. I just felt I needed to be an entrepreneur, business owner, dabbled in a few different businesses as a kid growing up. Real estate wasn't really a part of it. No one in my family did real estate. There's no real estate agents. There was no real estate investors. My parents owned a home. My grandparents owned some real estate, but didn't really look at it as real estate investing. It wasn't until I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, probably a book that a lot of people read and kind of pushed them towards that direction. I read that book. And just really realized that there was something in me that said, okay, I want to look into real estate. I was actually working at a surf shop at that time in Hawaii, selling surfboards. And I became obsessed with real estate investing. I started to talk to all my customers, asking them, what do you guys do? Found my first mentor selling him a surfboard. He turns out he was a real estate investor. He was the very first real estate investor that I met and knew. And I became fascinated with that. So I ended up finding a way into his life a little bit where he became my unofficial mentor. I helped him out with some construction projects, and he taught me the ins and outs of how to get started in real estate, how to find deals. I had no money as a surfboard seller, right? You don't make a lot of money selling surfboards.
Not a lot of money in that.
Yeah, he taught me there's different skills, there's knowledge, right? There's three roles in every deal. Someone needs to run the deal, have the experience. Someone needs to bring the capital, and someone needs to find the deal. And so you can play one of those roles or all 3 of those roles. I had no experience, I had no money, so I had to learn how to find deals. So I got really good at finding off-market deals. In the beginning, they weren't great deals, and then eventually, through refining the process, learned how to find, okay, that's a good deal. It was actually my mentor that bought the deal, and my first deal was a partnership with him on a condo in Hawaii. And so I got to learn kind of from the back seat while someone experienced was doing it, and did that a few times until I had the confidence to go out on my own and start figuring out exactly what I wanted out of that real estate path.
I love it. Yeah, I didn't think there'd be a ton of money in selling surfboards, but I think that's like a great start. For that first property, I was just curious, how did you approach your, pseudo mentor and get him to, buy into the property for someone who's, maybe in the same shoes as you? Maybe they're selling surfboards and they've never gotten into real estate, but they want to. How did you approach that? How did you find a first deal? Any tips or advice you might have for someone on how to find a first deal and how to pitch, a joint venture partner to help them with that first purchase?
Yeah. That's a great question. So first I had to figure out what he needed. So he had capital. He was doing it for a while. He brought on partners every once in a while, but he had capital. He does what I do now. He refinances. He saves up his cash flow. So he bought a lot of his deals on his own. He had an operational team. He had some employees, some assistants. He just didn't have the deal flow. This is 20 plus years ago. And so there was no... there's a lot of social media. There's a lot of ways you can find deals now that just didn't exist back then. So he taught me what the deals were that he was looking for. He was looking for cash flow. He wanted some value add. He wanted the ability to be creative. Is actually a condo hotel that we bought. In Hawaii, some of the hotels are they're condo units owned by individual owners that they just rent out part of the condo hotel. Right now there's Airbnb. That didn't exist back then. In Hawaii, like literally the hotel ownership might be individually owned. So we found one of those. In Hawaii, there's people that buy real estate for all different reasons. They live there, they vacation there, they want it as an investment. This particular one happened to be one that wasn't updated in a long time. Turns out those owners bought it a long time ago. They weren't visiting there and taking advantage of it anymore. And so direct mail was how I was able to reach out to them. So find them, right now there's a lot of tools to find the information. Back then it was actually going to the tax records, figuring out the search. If they're in an LLC, can you figure out how to get a hold of who the administrator of the LLC is? We lucked out. It was in their name, and we sent them a letter. I think I ended up sending them 3 letters over a span of a few weeks. Eventually got a call, and they were interested. They were thinking about selling their property, just didn't get around to it. And so we made them an offer where we could buy it from them and take over the operations. And my partner or my mentor, I just knew he needed leads. And so I just went out. That was probably the 3rd or 4th deal that I brought to him. They weren't, the first 3 didn't meet his criteria. They were off market, but they didn't really meet his criteria. So he refined it. He said, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to make sure it has this level of margin or this level of upside. And once I understood that, I got better and better at finding off market deals, really, particularly for him, because he was the only investor I knew. So I wasn't, right now there's wholesaling. Wholesaling wasn't really a thing back then. I don't know if that term even existed. And he was saying, there's value. I'll give you value to bring me that deal. He wanted to pay me a fee. And I said, rather than pay me a fee, I want to be a partner on this. Can you give me some equity? I think I ended up getting like 7% equity on that deal. Probably ripped me off. I probably should have got 25% or somewhere along those lines, but extremely worth it because I learned a lot during that process, and really it just gave me the confidence because I could have easily sat around for 2-3 years figuring out how to save up money and how to learn more, and I would have been 2-3-4 years behind, or maybe I would have got distracted and done something else, and I wouldn't be where I am today.
So one thing that I took away there that I think someone could do, if you're looking to get into real estate investing, never bought a property before, what you could do is you could go to some investor networking meetups, find an investor who's looking to buy, find out what their buy box is, just like you did with your mentor. You found out what he wanted, what he was looking for. Go out there, do the hustle, find a deal, talk to the owner, secure something that that person would want, and then reach out and negotiate either an equity deal like you did, or potentially just a wholesale fee if that's how you want to get started. So I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah, no, it really, I didn't know that was the strategy in the beginning, but we started, over the years, we started coaching, training, helping a lot of people. We have our own community, and within our community, a lot of people are starting out exactly how I started out. They didn't have a lot of money, they don't have the experience, and we say, go find deals. And right now there's a lot of places to learn to be wholesalers. Great companies that teach people how to be wholesalers. But I say, okay, before you create a wholesale company, go and find 1 or 2 investors and niche down very, very specific. It's going to be so much easier to narrow down to 1 or 2 neighborhoods or a few zip codes that particular investor is committed to buying in, and just say, if I go out and find a deal for you that meets your margins, and I would tell them you're brand new and you're going to work just for them until they buy a deal, right? If you're an experienced investor, I'm excited about that. I want people working just for me. I know eventually they're going to hopefully become big investors, big wholesalers themselves. But if for their first few deals, they can go find me deals specifically, you will find those investors who will say, okay, I'll give you more time. I'll give you more attention. I'll look at your deals, deeper if I know that you are looking for deals specific for me, my unique buy box. And so there's a whole ton of people that I taught to go find deals now that go out and look for deals for me, and that helped me to scale from going from 1 property a year to 2 to 3 to now we buy somewhere between 50 and 100 deals per year.
Wow. Yeah. And I think even though you probably didn't realize it at the time, and like you said, maybe you could have got a better deal, but I think getting that 7% equity is a lot better sometimes than just getting a one-off wholesale fee. I think getting actually a little piece of the pie, probably good for you just from the mental perspective to be like, ooh, I own a little piece of this, real estate here, and it probably got the wheels churning and probably got you really motivated. What did you do from that first property to sort of grow to, maybe not to where you are today, the 500 plus, but what did you do? What were some next steps that you did to go from sort of 1 to maybe, 10 or 20 to just get yourself to that next level?
Yeah, I took one of his first advices pretty literally. There's only 3 roles in a deal, right? the experience, whoever's the operator of the deal, the money of the deal, and the deal finder. So I built my skill of deal finding, but I wanted to move up into those other roles. I wanted to figure out how much did I need to actually be the capital in a deal, to invest with somebody else or to buy my own deal. And I really wanted to buy my own rental property. I couldn't afford Hawaii, so I had to look at how do I find other places outside of Hawaii that were within my budget, because for me to go from $0 in the bank to $100,000 in the bank, that was going to take me a while. But go from $0 to $20,000, all right, that was achievable. I could do that, and figuring out what I need to do to get there. So that became my first goal is, all right, I'm going to save up $20,000, and I identified a few markets that could be a down payment for a very cheap rental property to get me my first deal. And then the other bucket of experience, after my first deal, I still didn't feel like I was experienced. So I put a threshold on myself. I'm like, it's probably 3 or 4 deals of me being in as a partner, slowly taking on more of those responsibilities for my partner so I can get that experience. So I kind of hit that threshold, 3, 4 deals before I'm ready to be that experience in a deal. Now, most of the deals we do, we play all 3 roles. We bring our capital, we find our own deals, and we operate it. But every once in a while, we do strategic partners as well, especially with newer investors trying to get in. We give them the opportunity to say, okay, you can play backseat driver on this and learn while we're doing this deal. And maybe that gives you the experience and the confidence to start your own portfolio.
I love it. So you've basically gone full circle. We're now you are giving the ability to these new investors the opportunity to get a little piece of the pie, start to build their confidence, start to, hit that one part of the 3 pieces to buy real estate and work their way up. So I think that's really awesome. It's really cool when people sort of pay it forward and get back to the new investors, because I think everyone needs a little bit of help when they're first getting started.
Yeah, no, I think I started in my 20s. I think I was 21 when I bought my first property. So, I've kind of lived my life in decades. My 20s was about financial freedom. How do I acquire as many properties as possible that's going to give me the cash flow I need to be free, or to give me the confidence to take bigger risks is probably really what I wanted. I didn't know how to verbalize that at that time. Then I met my wife, we have our family, 3 kids now. It kind of shifted my focus in my 30s to like, all right, beyond just freedom, we have that. What does generational wealth look like? What is setting up this next generation? Me figuring out being a dad. I'm still trying to figure that out. But put the right examples, the experience, and the resources available so that the next generation can thrive. Hit my 40s a few years ago, and it's shifted to I've been more and more obsessed with the purpose. What's the purpose of this all? Like, can I figure out a way to give back? Yeah, making money is great. I still like winning. I still like doing deals and making money. But more and more is like, what is the purpose? Like that one rental property or these 10 rental properties in this portfolio that we're buying isn't going to change our life in any meaningful way. Isn't really going to change the life of the people that are renting it. So trying to look at are there more purposeful things? So we shifted a percentage of our portfolio to do a few things. Co-living, several years ago we got into co-living, which I believe is helping out the affordable housing crisis that we have. Almost any area you go to, housing affordability is the number one issue on the minds of especially young people. Co-living, room-to-room rentals for young working professionals is a great resource, and it happens to be a great way to own a nice A-class or B-class asset that normally might not cash flow well and help you cash flow well. So we shifted to that, and then we recently got into assisted living facility as well. We purchased our first one maybe 7 months ago in Florida, and same thing. All that is co-living, room-to-room rentals, but we're adding services on top of that. And the people that are there are people where that's their really only option, and they need not just housing, but they need food, they need care, they need someone to take care of them, and to be able to run a business or build a business on top of that hopefully becomes successful, but also is meaningfully affecting their lives. Feels much more rewarding than what we were doing, for the majority of our career.
Could you just give us a bit of a breakdown of, what assisted living is in your mind for the people listening, what that first deal looked like, as much of the numbers as you could, the purchase price, I know you renovated it, so maybe what the renovation cost is and what your anticipated, revenue projections are from that?
Yeah, for sure. Assisted living, it was a foreign concept for me. Growing up in Hawaii, I don't remember ever seeing that. I'm sure a few exist, but the reality is we never saw that. We had both of our grandparents in Hawaii. We took care of them, right? We became their caregivers, 2, 3 generations kind of living together, taking care of each other, which is probably more of a cultural thing. Probably an economic thing as well. Like the reality is Hawaii is extremely expensive to live and the income is not that high. And so you got to figure out how do you pair together multiple generations to even be able to live there. And so we saw that. I remember when I love my grandparents. I love being able to be a part of their life, but I remember the stress, the toll it was on my parents. My mom specifically, that became the primary caregiver for multiple grandparents, and her basically having to give up her career, her life, all of her ambitions to become that primary caregiver. So it was a huge sacrifice. And sometimes that takes a toll on them. That might even take a toll on their relationship, right? So seeing now more and more care options where you don't need to be the primary caregiver. They can have someone that's 24/7 there taking care of them. You can go hang out with them. You can visit them. It's like our facility is not a big like hospital-like facility. It's literally a one level, looks like a residential home. So it feels like a residential home. They happen to be living there with other people, and they get this community a part of it. So for the last few years, I knew that this was the path that I wanted to get into. I joined a few masterminds, I hired coaches specifically. Every time I do something different, I always try to hire a coach, join a mastermind to learn, really condense my learning curve to figure out how can I fast track my ability to feel confident in this space. And we identified our buy box. We wanted to start out with a small assisted living, somewhere between 12 and 25 beds. There's 100-bed facilities, but that's not where we want to go. I wanted to stay within residential assisted living, and I wanted some value add. We have really good construction teams. We've done many renovations over the years, so that's something that I knew that we could take something that needed love, that we can do a good job at updating that property. But hopefully we find something with the good operations in place, good admin, good workers already there, loving their job, hopefully stable there for a while, and some residents, so that there's income coming in while we're doing this renovation. And while we're really figuring out how to run an assisted living facility, it's helpful to have that come through. So we made offers on 3 different facilities that we didn't move forward on for one reason or another. Through due diligence, it didn't work for us. And then this facility that we bought just lined up perfectly with what we were looking for. The owner was a great operator, and running it for many years, just didn't have the resources and maybe even the business know-how to run the business side of it. She knew the care side of it, but definitely a lot of value opportunities. Altogether, the real estate, the business, and the renovation were probably $1.5 million for the entire project. Whenever you get into assisted living, the real estate and the business are separate. If the business has well-run operations and it's fully occupied, then that business valuation is higher. If it's a poorly run business, then that business valuation is lower, right? So it might be $100,000 for the business, or it might be $1 million for the business, depending on the revenue coming in. And so we saw the potential. The property, we probably spent $350,000 on renovations after taking over that. It was a little bit more trickier than our normal renovation because we're renovating this property with 8 residents currently in place, and which means we had to relocate residents to this wing, seal it up, make sure that while we're doing construction, no dust was going over there. So what should have been maybe a 3 to 4 month renovation probably turned into a 6 to 7 month operation because of that uniqueness. But overall, came out beautiful. Every time we go there, the residents thank us, and like we are their most favorite people. I've never had a tenant thank me for anything. I don't think I've ever had a tenant be so grateful, but every single time they're so grateful for the artwork that we picked out and the new sofa that we put in there and the new TV. They had this tiny TV and we got this big TV, little things like that. Because that's their home. Most of those residents have actually been in that facility for over 10 years, and that's just been their home. So we gave them a major upgrade, and then we looked at the business operations. There was no website, there was no Google profile, there was nothing online. So this operator owner was really good at care, but really didn't have the systems in place to put new people in. Basically, if someone knocked on her door, said, "Do you have room?" That's how she filled up the capacity. So, and a lot of the rooms that were vacant weren't in a condition where they could take on new residents. So, as of literally just last week, finished renovation, did our grand opening. We actually did a 3-day open house. We had 50 plus people come through, and we're vetting new residents as we speak to start filling. We have 4 vacant rooms that we can fill. So we're excited to add to that community. And hopefully this is a template. We're making all the mistakes, hopefully not big mistakes, but learning what system do we need in place for this in the future so that we can build a brand around, multiple locations through multiple states.
So you bought it for 1.5, you put in 350. If you were to, turn around and sell it today, let's say you fill up any vacancies you have, what do you anticipate it could potentially be worth if you were to fill it all up and sell it today now with all the additional stuff you've done?
Yeah, we didn't buy it for 1.5. That was the total project cost. Whenever I do investment, I factor in everything, start to finish, total project cost. So I think it was closer to $1 million real estate and business that we bought, maybe a little bit more than that, factoring in the renovation costs, factoring in overhaul, the hiring of the attorneys. We had to do a license transfer. The license was in place, but there's still a pretty onerous process to change that license over to us. And that took almost 6 months in of itself, and
Oh, wow.
several layers of attorneys and specialized CPAs to do that. So we set aside the budget for that. We set aside a budget for, paid marketing, Google ads, Facebook ads, Meta ads, creating the website, which we didn't have as well. So building the systems that they didn't really have, that was part of it. So all encompass 1.5 total project. To be honest, I don't know what it would sell for once stabilized. I haven't looked at that. I don't ever sell real estate. I almost never buy something with the intention to sell it. I have sold a lot of real estate, but never have I bought a property outside of every once in a while we did fix and flips. We don't do them anymore. Then obviously you're buying that to sell. But when I buy something, I say, I want to keep this forever. I just need to cash flow today. I want to cash flow more tomorrow and keep going up. And if it goes up in value, great. We'll be able to refinance, strip equity from that. This falls into commercial, which is not what I focus on. I focus on residential. All the properties I buy, the vast majority of them are 4 units or less, so we can put residential debt on them, DSCR type loans. Once you go to 5 units or more, that's where you get into commercial space. So this was, and because it's operating as an assisted living facility, it's commercial. So we ended up buying this cash, which I normally don't do on properties. We're probably going to refinance just the real estate, not the business, at some point now that we're renovated. My guess is it's probably somewhere in the closer to $2 million valuation range as we speak with the renovation. Once stabilized, revenue. Currently, they were bringing in $2,600 a month. They were getting on the lower end, which is basically relied on just Medicaid and Social Security. If you kind of think of Medicaid within the assisted living route, it's kind of like Section 8 in America, right? Section 8 housing is like government subsidized housing or government paid housing. It might be a lower price point, not always the case, but let's say it's the lower price point that you're getting, but it's guaranteed income. So within the assisted living realm, there's Medicaid and Social Security, but it's capped by state. And so 26 is right around that cap. When you make your facility nicer, you can attract private pay customers. And we're looking at somewhere between $3,500 and $4,000 a bed with private pay customers, still keeping our Medicaid, clientele and residents, and adding a few more of that, but having a mixture there. So all in all, we should see a really good revenue bump because more than half the units were vacant, and so that was unrealized revenue. But there's a lot more expenses involved, right? We cook for them, so there's food for the entire year for 18 residents. There's full-time staff, 24 hours a day. We have to have staff there. We don't provide. We're not skilled nursing, so we don't need to provide nursing. There's another tier above us where there's nursing provided, but we do need a full-time staff that can cook, that can clean, that can take care of them. So overall, the expenses drive up much higher than an average rental property. But at the end of the day, even on a cash purchase, estimating roughly $1.5 million, we were expecting somewhere close to a 20% cash on cash return once stabilized. If we're able to pull out some of that through debt, then obviously that cash on cash return would go up. But we want to prove our model with minimal stress, minimal, time clocks tied to us. And so we went in with a cash purchase, and our next few will probably be very similar to that. And then at some point we might look at, there's various types of financing for businesses, SBA loan financing, and a few others that get much more complicated. The reason I don't like the commercial debt is they're not 30-year mortgages like residential. They're typically 5-7-year mortgages. And, if you can't control the mortgage and you can't control the interest rates, when you have to refinance, that puts you in a tough spot. And so a lot of people do it. A lot of people make a lot of money with commercial investing and commercial financing. It's just a little bit beyond my risk profile, at least at the moment.
I think that was a really great breakdown. I learned a ton just there. And I understand what you're saying about the 5-year mortgage. Unfortunately, here in Canada, every mortgage is a 5-year mortgage. And you have to renew it every 5 years. I think it's ridiculous. It's obviously just to make the banks more profit. But I think that was a great breakdown. So I did have a question about the assisted living, because it does sound like there's a lot more involved in it. Like you said, having care and food. What advice would you give to someone who's listening today who is maybe interested in the assisted living space? They think it's a great business model. What have you learned on this first property that you could give some advice to someone to be like, hey, if you're looking to get into this, here's what you need to know?
Yeah, it's more of a business acquisition than real estate by far. The real estate was easy. Renovation, you could be somewhat hands-off if you have a good team on that. You still need to stay on top of your contractors, but if you have a good team that you trust, that's pretty straightforward. The business does not move forward without a business operator. And if you are buying it, you are the business operator. Sure, you can be a passive partner in something like this. I was actually a passive partner in a deal similar to this several years ago, so I got to kind of view from a distance. But if you're the one operating it, you need to know what you're doing, or you need to commit your time to learning and growing so that you can be a good business operator. So I like it because there's a big moat around it, meaning it's hard to get into this business. It's hard to turn a regular property into assisted living. There's so many regulations around that. Building from the ground up is a potential, but same thing, there's licensing requirements that you may or may not get approved for. So we took the easiest path that we thought we could, which is buying an existing licensed facility and being able to convert that. And I still believe that's probably was the easiest path. Is it the most profitable path? Probably not. My opinion, building from the ground up, probably. You can build it the way you want, control your costs, and that's probably the biggest profit potential in this, but we want to learn that process. So learn how to be an operator. My goal is to be the operator myself. I have staff. I had the previous owner that we kept on as an admin to kind of work through that transition. But I want to make sure I know exactly ins and outs on how to do this so that I can put a team in place eventually and replicate this. If I wanted to treat this like one of my normal rental properties, like this would have been failed by now. Like just buy it and hands off and just have them run it. Nothing would have moved forward. It is heavy business operation. So you either love business or you hate business. Like, I don't know if there's anything between. You love running business, meaning you're an entrepreneur, you like building these businesses, then it's probably for you to look into, just knowing that you got to bring an operator in at some point to be able to do that. So luckily, I've been good at business. I love business. I probably love business more than I love real estate. I realized early on, real estate was a really cool business in of itself. I actually retired a couple times. When I moved from Hawaii to Northern Virginia, retired, realized I wasn't ready to retire. So I got into the brokerage ownership world, had my own real estate brokerage that I ran, and I trained agents, and that was great. And I retired from that about 4 years ago or so. And then I really just missed operating a business, or missed operating the business. And so I went into this knowing it wasn't going to be a regular investment for me. I wanted something to dig my teeth into, to commit my time in terms of operating a business, not forever, for the next several years, as I build a team around these acquisitions and hopefully provide a unique product that will benefit our residents.
Wow, so much value I just pulled from that. I think one of the key takeaways that I got was just with this business model, if it is something that you're interested in, the assisted living, there is a huge moat around it, like you said, where it's difficult to get in, but if you're willing to put in that time and effort, you got a really good chance at building, a great business out of it. And there's a ton of opportunity because not everyone who invests in real estate or not everyone who does business is going to want to dive into it just because of all the intricacies of it. I know something that you do, and we talked about it a little bit, is you purchase real estate portfolios, and that's how you sort of grown, to the over 500 properties, which is, obviously an amazing feat that you've done. Could you tell us a little bit about, how you got into buying portfolios? What exactly does that look like for someone? I'm sure there's people out there listening who maybe don't want to go the route of buying one property and then one and trying to grow a portfolio there. So I think this is another avenue that you do that's unique, but it can give people the opportunity to really grow a good portfolio quickly.
Yeah, we started buying one at a time, and to be honest, I think that's the best way to start. One at a time, stabilize it, learn. You make mistakes. You make mistakes on one, not 10, right? And then you start buying 2 per year, then 3 per year, then 4 per year, and then our progression just happened that way. Like literally, when I started, I committed to buying one property every year of my life, and that's what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be 10, 15 years. I'm going to have 10, 15 properties, and I was going to be good. But then more deals come your way, more opportunities come your way. You learn about creative financing, you learn about partnerships, you learn about off-market deals, and then 2 becomes easier, then 3, then 4. Then you kind of reach a natural threshold of what makes sense for you. So I was doing probably somewhere between 10 to 15 properties a year that we were acquiring, and I was at a mastermind, and it was kind of felt like I was at a plateau. I was hovering around that amount, and this mastermind is like a vivid vision mastermind. One of the best masterminds that you could attend is basically casting out a vision 3 years. What does life look like? What does business look like? What are some big goals that you don't know how to get there, but you're gonna like kind of set these goals or these visions for? And instead of me doing one property per year, something came up. I was like, man, what if I could do one property every single week? All right, so like 52 properties in 52 weeks kind of became my mantra. And we stumbled across earlier that year one transaction where we stumbled into this portfolio acquisition. It didn't become our main strategy at that point because it was difficult. But we found a seller, is off market, and we wanted to buy his duplex. And we reached out, and he's like, yeah, I'll sell you my duplex. Great, we got it under contract all the way through almost to closing, and he calls us up like just distraught. He's like, I don't know what to say. I can't sell you this property. He's like, what are you talking about? And like, we got a deal. It's like, no, I understand that, but I have a portfolio loan across, I think it was like 12 properties. And my bank told me that I can't sell this one, or at least for this price. It was basically the first property he sold that he had to pay off way more. He had have no extra equity on that. They like to chop off, when you sell them off one at a time, they take extremely high amounts in the beginning, and then the remaining 2 or 3 you almost own free and clear. And that's how many portfolio loans do it. And so he says, I can't afford to sell this one property. I would have to bring money to the table. They told me if I sell all of them, then I can sell it at this price. And he's like, you wouldn't be interested in buying all these properties, would you? I'm like, well, I don't think I can buy all those properties. I can buy one property. But then we worked through, all right, like 10 different scenarios. And then we brought in what his payoff was. I knew creative financing at that point. So, okay, well, maybe a seller carryback on a few of these scenarios to help us to reduce our down payment so that we can qualify to buy these. And we worked, it was probably 2 months of just back and forth. He really wanted to work with me. He felt bad for not selling that deal. And then we stumbled into, all right, we're going to buy this entire portfolio, and here's how we're going to do it. And we just created this playbook from scratch during that one scenario. It was the most difficult transaction because there's so many moving parts, but we got a bunch of properties at that one time. And then we let it sit. And then when I'm at this mastermind saying, how do I get one property per week? That came back to me. I'm like, whoa, yeah, I can't do 52 transactions. I can do 3 or 4 complex transactions a year that are just portfolios. If I get 3, 4 that are 10 to 20 properties each, that meets my criteria. And that simplifies it. So It wasn't how do I do 5% more, 10% more, because the answer to that is just work harder, work longer. If you want to do 200, 300% more, you got to do something different, right? So we said, we're going to change our business model, and we're going to completely shift to this is the only thing we're going to do. We're going to buy portfolios, because many people that start out buying 1, 2, 3 properties and then small multifamily, the next natural progression is getting into large multifamily. And that was what I thought my next natural progression was. I've been in syndications, I've been in a few things, but it just never sat right for me, particularly because my adverse reaction to that commercial debt. We're seeing that in United States right now. There's a lot of commercial debt properties that are struggling because of that 5-year balloon that they're dealing with, not being able to predict interest rates, not being able to predict cap rates. And so I wanted to stay out of that, but I wanted to be able to scale, not buy 4 doors at a time. I wanted to buy 50 to 100 doors at a time, but I put individual 30-year debt on all of them. And so now I'm one of the only buyers that buys in bulk that way. Many people buy 1 or 2 duplexes at a time, and there's many people buying the big 100-unit apartment buildings or more. But this niche spot, I talk about it all the time. I was on Bigger Pockets podcast years ago. I shared it. I got a lot of people saying, how do you do that? But the reality is you find out how to do that, and you realize there's a lot of moving parts. So it's your patience and it's your ability to work through understanding how loans work, understanding the DSCR loan process, so that you can kind of take maybe 10, 20 properties and then figuring out what is the order of closing these, ideally all within the same week, sometimes on the same day, but which ones are you moving capital into, which ones are you doing seller financing for? And so it becomes like a 3D puzzle. And for some reason, I've seen that puzzle enough where it just makes sense for me now.
Is there a particular strategy you use to try to find, investors who have a portfolio to sell? Is there anything that you do differently to try to source out who actually maybe has this portfolio that you can purchase from them to grow? Or how do you go about finding people?
Yeah, in the beginning, I did a lot of direct to seller, PropStream, all the tools out there. Like you can search on those tools and see who has more than one property. And so you can sort by someone that owns 10 or more properties. And we used to do that primarily. I don't do much direct to seller anymore because I built a network, right? So when I got into real estate and had a real estate brokerage, I taught 100 plus agents how to go find those off market deals. And by the way, if you find off market deals, I want to buy those from you, right? And then we created a community called the Cashflow Breakfast Club, where we teach investors, experienced and new investors, how to go find those off market deals. Everyone's looking for something different. I'm the only one that I've ever met looking for exactly what I'm looking for. And the moment someone starts doing exactly what I'm doing, I'm going to tweak what I'm looking for a little bit more. I like being unique. So whenever I present, whenever I talk at a real estate event or do any sort of training, I share what my buy box is and say, here's my unique buy box. I'm looking for this. By the way, you guys all just learned how to go find off market deals today. If you find that, I will pay you well, as a wholesale fee, or even in some cases a partnership fee to be able to make that work.
I think that's a great strategy. Get people out there looking for properties for you. They know what you want. They bring it to you. Saves you a lot of time, and you just got to be there ready to execute when they find and bring you a deal. One thing I know that you do, we talked about it a little bit, and I love it, is that you love to have your family involved in this business with you. I think for a lot of people who are first getting into real estate, one of the common roadblocks people might get is, I don't know if my spouse wants to do it, my partner's not into real estate, I got to try to get them on board. But you have your wife and your kids involved with it. How did you decide that you wanted to sort of bring them into this world, and what roles do they play in the world? I'd love to get a little bit of a breakdown and understanding of just how you structure it with your family.
Yeah, I don't know if I had a choice. We're still young, like building it, right? And then we had our first son. I was like, I'm taking my son with me everywhere. So he's like 3 months in, going to these properties, walking on with me, and that's just been their life. They grew up knowing that. And most of what we buy is not near us, so they're all remote scenarios. But as they got older, I intentionally tried to buy a few properties per year that are within driving distance of wherever we were, so that they can be involved, so that they can walk it, they can meet the contractors, so that their weekend project is painting the railings or whatever it is, putting them to work so that they get the feeling of being investors. Now, I have 3 kids. My oldest is 17. My daughter is going to be 14. and my youngest son's going to be 12. So they all have different interests. I call my daughter our mini CEO. She has a personality where she loves it. She would want to, take over the business today if she could. She'd probably do better than I would. She's been to 100 plus, meetups and presentations that I've run. She can probably run some of those herself at this point. My oldest, he's more of an analytical thinker, more of an IT guy. He'll probably be the one really figuring out the AI usage within our business. We dabble within AI, but I'm sure he'll unlock something bigger for that as well. My youngest son is still trying to figure it out, but it really is. I wasn't trying to force any of my kids to love real estate. I've always told them you can do whatever you want with your life as long as your goal or achievement of financial freedom comes through real estate. So if you want to be a ballerina, my daughter went through a dancing phase, be a ballerina. You're not going to become financially free through that. So make sure that you are also buying real estate and owning real estate. You want to go work at Starbucks, that's your passion, great, go do that, but you need to own real estate as well. So try not to push this as their main thing. It's still early to figure out if they pivot into real estate and want to actually be in the business full time. I'm hoping at least one of them want to do that. But for the time being, they're learning. They're having, financial literacy, education that you typically don't get in schools. And my wife, she's less involved on the day-to-day. She's more on the design side. To be honest, she doesn't even really love real estate. Every time I get excited, say, hey, look, we got this big portfolio under contract. She usually says something along the lines of, why do we need that one again? And because she's right. We're at a point where us buying real estate doesn't affect our lives, but I still love it. I still love the deal. I still love the building of things, but she has really good design eye. So anytime we're doing a higher end renovation like our assisted living or a short-term rental, she gets involved and she loves that. Her creativity side comes out. So everyone plays a different role. Trying to not force them into any roles in of itself, but we do use these projects as discussions for our kids to kind of hopefully instill a few lessons with them.
I love that. I think it's great how you just got them involved. I really like that approach of, hey, you don't have to, be a real estate investor like your dad is, but, understanding the value of it, how it can, fund your lifestyle, how it can fund, whatever you want to do for a living, but just having that base gives you that freedom, the whole, financial freedom, time freedom, making sure they understand the value of that. I think that's a really important lesson that you've taught your kids. And I think that's great. Just getting them involved, getting them to learn. It sounds like hopefully they'll probably want to be involved in your business down the road. But like you said, even if they don't, they have those good financial habits, good money habits, good entrepreneur values. So they've been learning all that through osmosis since they were 3 months old. So, I mean, that's amazing. I love what you did there.
Yeah, no, it's funny. People ask all the time, like, what if they don't want to be in the business? So right now, my standing theory is probably the thing that me and my wife disagree on the most is she loves her kids so much. She wants to give them everything, make sure that they never struggle in life, never have to work for anything. And I love them so much that I want to give them nothing to make sure that they do struggle so that they grow, right? Because we come from different worlds. I don't know what the answer will be if my kids get all of our real estate or not. Right now, the answer is it's probably not going to go that way. It's probably going to go into a foundation or something along those lines. And I openly talk about that. My kids hear it. So they don't think they're inheriting anything. However, they have the opportunity to earn their way into several of our deals, several of our properties. So they have properties that they quote unquote co-own, obviously too young to actually own it at this point, that they have earned equity in. So they could earn equity into 2 or 3 properties that will set them up for if they do want to go to college, great. If they don't want to go to college, then it helps them start their business and put them on a path. But at this point, it's not a congratulations, you guys inherited 1,000 properties. Hopefully it's they don't need the properties. That's my goal. I want to raise them to a point where they are building something as amazing or bigger than what I'm doing that they don't actually need the wealth that we can transfer to them. Then I think it would be more comfortable for me to transfer that at some point, because I have this fear, and it's probably a fault in my own beliefs, but I have this fear of just transferring something and giving someone too much wealth or too much opportunity, and that really limiting their growth and putting them down a path that maybe they're not going to reach their highest potential. So we'll see where that ends up. We're still years away from having to figure out what to do there. But I'm love talking to dads that are in real estate, that are in entrepreneurship as well, and getting their ideas of how are they handling that. How are they mentoring their kids so that they can responsibly take over a business or inherit something of massive wealth at some point without that entire business, failing within 1 or 2 generations, as most businesses tend to do.
I think that's a great perspective. I mean, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I haven't really introduced them to it too much. But now after talking to you, I'm like, I'm probably going to have to start exposing them just a little bit more. Just even if they don't quite understand what it means and what the concepts are, they'll at least just start to absorb it over time, and eventually it'll start to click with them. So I think that's my takeaway. What I'm going to do is just sort of start to get my kids a little bit more into it and just a bit more of an understanding about like what we do and why we do it. I did want to ask you a question because you're still actively buying. You hear on social a little bit about how, it's a bad time to purchase, the market's dead. You always hear that no matter what time of, the real estate cycle it is. So I just wanted to know, what states are you liking right now? Like if you were to give someone an advice on where to look at for investments right now, like what, 3 to 4 states would you say, hey, there's still good opportunity here to find cash flowing deals?
Yeah, I think you can make real estate work in any state. You just got to change your strategy. The same strategy doesn't work in every state, but your strategy will depend on what your actual goals are, right? If you need cash flow to exit a job, if that's your goal, then all right, you're going to look for something very specific. If you love your job, or you have a business that you never plan to stop and you're making a whole bunch of money there, you don't need the cash flow. All right, you might need the equity, right? So those are the two spectrums of where you are. Or you might have a really good W-2 job and you're being taxed like crazy. All right, can you buy something that's a tax shelter as well that will cash flow and grow in the future, right? So you have different perspectives, and every state can make it work. You just got to change your strategy. So for example, in Hawaii, normal cash flow just did not work for me, and it was out of my price range. So I had to figure out, how do I go abroad? And I started looking at the states that were more affordable. Now, they're more affordable because they didn't go up in value like Hawaii did, or like California did, or like, DC, Northern Virginia, where I spent a lot of time, really, really high prices there. That's great. Values go up, but that means that the cash flow no longer works because the values outpace the rent in those scenarios. So I knowingly, if I want cash flow, I'm looking for an area that doesn't go up in value as much as an A-class area typically does. So I'm looking for B-, C+ neighborhoods. And the only reason they're cash flowing is because they don't go up at 5% per year. They're going up at 1%, maybe 2%, and the rent is keeping pace with that. And they're typically older areas. So for example, Northern Virginia, it's outside of DC. There's some amazing counties, Loudoun County, Fairfax County, Arlington. Prices skyrocketed over the last 15 years. Nothing cash flows. All right, but if you go an hour outside of that, there's the tertiary markets that people have to go to for affordability that are still within driving distance there. And those are the markets that we start to buy in. So we have properties in Virginia, we have properties in Florida, we have properties in Maryland, we have properties in many, many states. I tend to like red states versus blue states for long-term cash flow, just less regulations, but I own in many blue states as well. So some people kind of put hard lines in there. Right now, I'm buying a lot in Florida just because there's so much opportunity. It went up a lot in prices in some of the markets and it started to come down, and you have so much inventory on the market. It's absolutely a buyer's market. So you're finding what's on the market or off the market, and then the reality is the sellers are willing to negotiate. There's more opportunity to do something like a seller carry or some sort of creative financing to get a low interest rate locked in for 5 to 10 years. And now that property works even better. And you could sell it or refinance in the future if that's what you're thinking. But I tend to, for my portfolio, still look at the B-, C-class markets in red states. And then when I'm looking at co-living or short-term rental, I'm typically looking at B+ or A-class markets. Doesn't matter really if it's red or blue states. I just need to know if there's a demand for it. And we do tests in a market for co-living or short-term rental. There's tools to figure out if those opportunities exist now.
Wow. I think that was a great rundown for anyone who's listening here who just wanted to get a little insight into, where you can buy. I think, like you said, there's opportunity everywhere. It just depends on, what you're looking for, what your goal is. And in each area that you're looking to go to, you just got to adjust your strategy and sort of figure out what works in that market and focus on that, and just hit it hard and go from there. I did want to just touch a little bit at the end here on the Cashflow Breakfast Club. I know you have, a great community of people. You've grown it to thousands of people. You have your meetups and everything. Could you just give everyone listening a little bit of a breakdown of, like what your club is, what you do, if someone wants more information about it, where they can find you and get there? Because I think there's a ton of value within your community that people could benefit from.
Yeah, I started that. I'm terrible with dates. I've been saying 8 years ago, but that's been for several years now. So it's probably maybe even 10 years ago now. When I ran a brokerage, I'm obsessed with real estate, right? And my job was real estate, and my hobbies were real estate, and my wife is not obsessed with real estate. So I come home and she's like, "Why are you talking to me about this? We don't need to spend this much detail talking about whatever it may be." So I realized I need to go out and be in a community with other people that are obsessed like I am. And I would go to meetups. And some were good, some weren't, and most like education events turned into some sort of sales pitch, and it just didn't feel right for me. And so I realized that there was a hole in the market in terms of like really good education without like the sales pitch, without really anything being sold there. And so when I had my brokerage, I started the first Cashflow Breakfast Club. It wasn't called that at the time, but it was basically real estate education and networking. And we got to just attract a bunch of weirdos like me that are obsessed with real estate or really want to become obsessed with real estate. And like we would get like 100 people showing up every single month just to kind of learn about this, talk about this. Started out as 1 hour, then it rolled into 2 hours, and eventually turned into like a 3-hour thing. And we kind of changed the format over time to make it more like a mastermind where they're going to get some education, but there's going to be some not open networking, more gamified networking, getting to know each other in a more intimate setting. And then when I exited the brokerage world, the one piece I kept was the real estate education. And so that became my own brand. And then I started to expand that to other markets, like a franchise. I partner with other investors in different markets that want to run this playbook. 12 sessions a month. Every session's a different topic. We give them the topics. So it's really a training for our leaders that are already real estate investors, but maybe you might be a fix and flipper. But we'll teach you everything, creative financing, off-market deals. So we coach our leaders, and then they turn around and for free run this event for the community. If you've attended real estate events, networking events particularly, you know the value of the network. It's 1,000 times more valuable if you run the network. And so we just kind of give people the opportunity to be their person in their community. Went from one location to, I think we have like almost 40 approved nationwide now. Actually, we have one in Canada that's getting ready to launch. Where is it? London, Canada? Anyways, international at some point. And so, yeah, it's been a passion project. A lot of my deals come from the Cashflow Breakfast Club. A lot of partnerships come within there. So it's been really rewarding to be able to do that. Brandon Turner, the previous host of The Bigger Pockets, a really good friend of mine. We've been talking about a partnership within that because he's been thinking about creating a community as well. And he's like, actually, your community looks really good. Can we partner on that? So within a month or so, we're probably going to be finalizing a partnership. So the name might shift a little bit to kind of reflect the partnership as well. But same concept. Cashflowbreakfastclub.com. You can find more about the community. It's free. It's in many, many locations. And more importantly, if you're an investor saying, man, I don't have a community of my own, I would like to run and start my own community, that's really who we partner with to help you do that so that you get to see that benefit locally within your market, giving back, but also building your team, building your deal flow as you want to grow your business.
I think that's great. I think there's a lot of negative stigma about, communities and groups sometimes just because everyone is trying to do it to make cash and do whatever. There's a bit of a stigma right now. So it's always nice to find one where it's like, it's not focused on the sales pitch. It's not trying to just push whatever, they have to offer people. And it's really just about building a community, offering value to people, and just trying to build a good network of people who are all there to help each other out and create win-wins for everyone in the group, in the community. So I think it's great that you've built that over the last 8 years, and put it together. And I think anyone listening, if you want to check it out, I definitely recommend it. Probably next time I'm in the States, next time I come down to Florida in the winter, I'm going to have to come check out one.
Absolutely.
Maybe see if you're there and meet up. I'd love to do that.
Love that.
I'd really like to thank you for your time today. I think I learned a ton, and I'm sure everyone listening learned a ton just about a lot of unique and cool things that you're doing. If people want to find you online and follow you on your journey and reach out and get a hold of you, where can they do that?
Yeah, I'm not huge on social media. It's not something that I've been focusing on. I probably should, I know. But Omni, the investor guy, is my personal handle on all platforms. And then Cashflow Breakfast Club is on all platforms as well. And you can find me on either of those.
There you go. I definitely recommend to everyone listening to give him a follow. I'm sure now he's going to get a little bit more active on social. But Omni, I really appreciate your time today. And for everyone listening, I hope you got a ton of value, and I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks again, man.
Thanks, guys.